Brahma's asked Vasistha why a corpse does not experience sensations even though they have sense organs. A corpse has sense organs, so does a living person, but the corpse no longer seems to experience anything. So why is this? And Vasistha's pointed out that there's pure consciousness and that the senses, mind and objects don't exist apart from that. But now he started talking in terms of the notion of the puryashtaka, which is the eight-gated city. It's a way of classifying the individual into the five senses, then the ego mind, and the lower mind, and the higher mind. So you've got the ego sense, which creates a sense of self, the lower mind, which operates with the senses, and the higher mind, which is sometimes called the intellect, or is that aspect which is more in tune with awareness. Now, one of the things about consciousness is when it's resting in itself, it is pure and unmodified. But consciousness has a tendency within it to identify with things, to identify with the things which arise within it, whether they're objects, other living beings, or ideas or notions. And it's this tendency which allows all of creation to happen. It's consciousness's way of finding out what it looks like. The eternal and infinite consciousness is indeed free of all modifications, but when there arises the notion of I am in it, that notion is known as the jiva, the individual. So in other words, as soon as you've got a sense of being individual, that becomes real. This is reminiscent of Descartes' I think, therefore I am. And I think isn't just a harmless thought. It's actually conceiving of something. When you start conceiving of something, then it has the beginning of reality. It might be an imaginary reality, but the more you subscribe to that notion, the more you think about it, the more you think in terms of it, the more real it becomes. So when we've got this notion of I am, which isn't just thinking of the words I am, it's thinking in terms of that notion, then we've got the sense of an individual arising, individual identity. It's that jiva that lives and moves in this body. And again, the body is also a notion. We could say we've also got the notion, I have a body. When the notion of I arises, Ahambhavana, it is known as egosense, ahamkara. When there are thoughts, manana, it is known as mind, manas. That's the lower mind. When there is awareness, bodhi, it is intelligence, buddhi. When seen drish by the individual soul, indra, it is known as the sense, indriya. So when seen by the individual soul, it's known as the sense. When what's seen? Well, again, it's only consciousness, it's only awareness, it's only consciousness seeing itself. But when consciousness is identified as an individual soul, then we talk about the senses, which here relate to the god Indra, because Indra is the dominant god, and the senses are what dominate us, or what tend to dominate us. When the notion of body prevails, it appears to be body. So along with the notion of I am, we've got the notion of a body. And when we start thinking in terms of a body, it becomes more and more real. It's something we have to learn as we grow up. We're told we have a body. The body learns to grow, and there are all sorts of sensations associated with that, which our attention gets locked into. When the notion of object prevails, it appears to be the diverse objects. And this is the notion of an external world, a world of objects, of people, of other creatures. However, through the persistence of these notions, the subtle personality condenses into material substantiality. If you can remember yourself when you were young, this certainly is the process, isn't it? Things seem quite insubstantial at first and come more and more into focus. The world becomes harder and colder even, although that often depends on your own personality. But certainly we start thinking in terms of a material world out there. So it doesn't really condense. The subtle personality doesn't really condense. It's just that the notions we have about things are no longer questioned. We accept them as true, as real. This is the nature of conditioning. The same consciousness thereafter thinks, I am the body, I am the tree, etc. So this is just consciousness identifying with notions within itself. It doesn't literally think, I am the tree, but it becomes the body, it becomes the tree, because it identifies with this notion, with these insubstantial notions which first arise. This isn't right or wrong. This is a process that's being described, which we can become aware of. Everything is consciousness identifying with everything. We have access to this directly within our own awareness, with consciousness at the heart of our being, identifying with all the notions we have about ourselves and all the notions we have about our world out there. So we can observe this directly from our witness consciousness, or from the witness consciousness. Thus, self-deluded, it rises and falls until it attains a pure birth and is spiritually awakened. Then, by being devoted to the truth, it attains self-knowledge. So everything is just awareness or consciousness doing its thing, losing itself in its things. And then now and again, every now and again, it realizes what's happening. I shall now tell you how it perceives the objects. Well, I think we'll wait for the next video for that one. How consciousness perceives objects.